Welcome, and thank you for joining me in this discussion of soft skills development, active learning in the classroom, and research into brain-based learning. Before we get started, it's important to note what soft skills development is. In today's classrooms, our students have actively embraced today's everyday simple technologies, and they're mastering them at earlier and earlier ages. These are technologies like cell phones, tablets, laptops. In fact, our desktop computers are practically obsolete. Actually, my 8-year-old was even able to master my iPhone before I ever even knew who Siri was. So before we get started into our discussion, it's important to note what soft skills actually are. The first one is general professionalism. And what I mean by this is the idea that while trying to conduct a normal conversation, let's say just as a teacher, with our students, we've noticed a decline in the ability to get our students to give us eye-to-eye contact. It's more of a looking down at the floors, looking up at the ceiling, staring at the book or the paper, whatever they're working on, or judging how to hold their body language, how to conduct themselves. Maybe I look happy here, or I look like I'd rather be somewhere else from here down. So just knowing how to conduct themselves in the classroom and in the hallways, and then later on when they move out into the workforce, general professionalism has taken a decline. Next, problem solving has also seen a decline in recent years. And what I mean by this is, at least from a classroom standpoint, when given a difficult task to perform, many students, rather than discussing it with their peers and asking questions and digging deeper into the information that they've been provided and looking at the evidence that they've been provided, would rather turn to Google to just be given the answer. So they're skipping that all-important, meaningful, deep critical thinking aspect that they were originally tasked with doing in the first place. Now, our students are very savvy, both when it comes to work and when it comes to technology. But one of the things that we've noticed is that they have really latched onto and mastered the idea of working smarter, not harder. Now, I don't know of anybody in the audience, or myself included, who is an opponent of this idea of work smarter, not harder. But they have taken it and run with it, and they've gotten good at it. So instead of working through the issue, this idea of let's just Google it, and Google has everything, whether it's right or wrong, they've learned pretty early on that they can just look up the answer on Google and find it and answer the question and move on. So finally, communication skills have taken a hit as well, unfortunately. Now, I'm not talking about communicating between each other. They've got that, and they're really good at it. In fact, some people would say that the way they communicate with each other is childish. I actually think it's pretty brilliant as long as they're using it for productive reasonings. But what I mean by this is they're texting, or they're using social media or email, what have you, and the speaker, the sender of the message, can convey his or her meaning pretty clearly to the recipient via whatever code they're using, whether it's emojis or it is abbreviated messages. They've taken the English language and they have abbreviated it to the point where it's almost indecipherable to anybody else reading it other than the sender and the receiver. So they've gotten quite efficient at using the English language. But what does that do for a traditional conversation? If you want to have a traditional email correspondence or a traditional face-to-face conversation, say between our adolescent and a parent or a teacher or even a future employer, how is that going to work out? What I mean is, have you sat down recently with an adolescent and had a conversation and not heard the word like come out of his or her mouth, and there was no comparison being made there? LOL. I'm just kidding. That's just for emphasis. So, I wonder though, how much of this is actually our students' faults? And let me explain what I mean. What I mean here is that we put our students in classrooms that are extremely busy, extremely short for time, and we are expecting them to learn as much material as possible to get prepared for a test, whether it's at the end of a unit, at the end of a week, at the end of a semester, a high-stakes test, ACT, AR test even. And they have learned pretty quickly that all they have to do is learn the material for the test, take the test to be done. And we've learned that as well as educators, and they've gotten really good at it. So they learn the material, take the test, and then what do with the material that they've learned? They box it up real neatly, and then they throw it away, never to be heard from again, generally. Not everybody, but this is the norm today. Then, outside of the classroom, as parents, we take our children and we put them in as many extracurriculars as possible, whether it's sports, or it's music, or it's dance, or it's theater, or it's art, whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. Actually, on the contrary, being active, being involved in activities and music and the arts has been shown to enhance brain activity and get our students really ready to receive information and ready to learn. So those are good things. And we should have our children involved in those sorts of activities. But they are used to living these high-paced lifestyles, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. So I think there's a chance that they have learned to be high-paced outside the classroom and high-paced inside the classroom, and they have learned to adapt that into their communication style and into their problem-solving lifestyle and into their professionalism style. So when we're communicating, we're getting one-word answers and abbreviated text. We're getting, as far as professionalism is concerned, they're coming and they're behaving as if they would at home. When it comes to problem solving, they're just looking it up on Google because that's the fast way to get the answer rather than really thinking through it. So now I wonder, as educators, how can we get off of this path that we have been going down for so long and that our students are so well trained to work on? Well, the answer is science. The answer is through brain-based learning. So what is brain-based learning actually? Well, brain-based learning is the idea that if we look at how our students learn, rather than thinking about the big buzzwords in education and rather than thinking about how we learned, how we did it, how we've always done it, or how our teachers did it. But if we think about really how kids learn best and use those practices in our classroom, then our students will see results. We will see results. In fact, according to Willis, if we're using brain-based learning and we're thinking about how the brain actually functions and takes in information, then we can improve long-term learning and brain function over time for our students. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We want them to learn the content, but we want them to learn how to learn. We want them to learn how to think and think about how they're thinking. So ways we can do this, and I'm just going to mention a few here, but ways we can do this is by chunking information. It used to be thought that people could learn 7 to 9, can hold and remember 7 to 9 pieces of information at a time, and that's just no longer true. It's now 4 to 6 pieces of information instead of 7 to 9. So things like your phone number and social security number, those are easy to remember because we've learned them and said them so long. But now for our students, they need anywhere from 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 pieces of information at a time. They need to have brain breaks. They need to have short periods of time in between learning so that they can stop, compare notes, talk to their peers, and find out if they understood what they just heard or what they just saw or what they just did. They need to learn information that is actually relevant to them. Because if we're teaching them Greek and it has nothing to do with them, then they are going to shut down. The amygdala is going to say, well, this has nothing to do with me. I'm in a stress mode right now. Don't want it. And they're not going to receive the information at all. So let's see how this works out in a classroom. Imagine, if you will, an elementary classroom. These students are there, they're fresh-faced, they're ready to learn, and they're going to learn basic literacy, math, social studies, and science. Sounds like every elementary school in the country, right? And the teacher could say, okay, we're going to read pages 5 through 10, and we're going to answer some questions. Anybody have any questions? But this teacher says, I'm going to do it differently today. So instead, she gives them an assignment, and she says, when I give you the signal, you're all going to get up, and you're going to move to the assigned groups that I've given you. And then when I give you the next signal, you're going to get up and move to the next group, and then the next signal will be the next group, etc. So the kids are excited. It's the first time they've done this kind of activity. It's awesome. So she gives the signal. They get up and move to their first group, and as they're walking around and moving, they're talking to their peers. They're asking questions. They're collaborating. They're problem solving, and the teacher is listening. She's walking around listening too, and she can hear who needs extra help, and she can hear who really gets it. So she's acting as a coach rather than the center of attention or the sage on the stage. And she's able to help who really needs help and just listen to the conversations. And so she's transformed by this experience just like the students are. And the students are able to monitor their own pace, and she's able to monitor them as well. And at the end of this whole activity, she gives them the last final signal the kids all already know because she uses this every day. She says, she claps her hands and she says, hocus pocus, and the kids put their things down and clap their hands and say, time to focus. So everybody's put their things down and all eyes are on her, and they know at this point that it is time for a break. And they know what the break is because that's what this signal means. It is time, she says, for them to go play. Studies have shown that playtime, especially for our youngest learners, is vital to brain development. It helps our students connect with the world and learn about the world around them. Some of our students may be playing in the little kitchen area. Some may be playing with costumes. They may all go outside and play tag, but it helps them learn to problem solve and work together. This is just pure, unfettered, joyful play. The teacher has not installed rules or anything. They get to do not what they want, but essentially what they want for 15 to 30 minutes a day. Even the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights has said that this is a birthright of all children, playtime. And this is not just in third world countries or war-torn countries around the world. This is for all nations, all children everywhere. So they come back in after playtime. They move on to their next assignment. They're ready to learn now. They're focused because they've had this opportunity to express themselves and get energy out. And I just wonder, though, if playtime is so vital to brain development and learning, why has it been so restricted in elementary schools in the United States recently? That's another study. Now we move into the middle school years. These students are involved probably in more advanced subject areas. They're probably involved in one or more extracurriculars, and they've gotten their first cell phones. It's time, at this point, it's time to really make content more relevant to them because maybe some of them are probably too cool for school. So our 7th grade teacher here is teaching about ecosystems. Great. She is going to get up there and lecture for 2 days. And at the end of those 2 days, she's going to let them answer some questions from the back of the book and then build a PowerPoint because they love technology. They're going to research a couple of things about ecosystems and then build her a PowerPoint. Doesn't that sound awesome? No, because I think I just lost a couple of you. You fell asleep while I was talking about that assignment. I'm just kidding about that. She's actually going to bring in guided discovery models and project-based learning. So she is going to tell them a little bit about ecosystems, and she's going to tell them, hey, you all have been asked by a TV station, a TV company, to be set designers for a TV reality show about a biosphere. So you all are going to be assigned a particular ecosystem. You're going to have to research it. Along the way, we're going to learn about different animal relationships through guided discovery and different disasters, whether man-made or natural disasters. But you have to decide how you're going to design your project and how you're going to deliver your project. So it's going to be either a 3D model on the computer or a physical model, and you're going to write a report about it at the end, and they're going to be in groups doing this. Imagine the creativity, the collaboration, and all the communication going on in this project. The kids loved it. I have to admit, it's not my project. I borrowed this from Jennifer Rancière, who's formerly of Jefferson Parish Middle School in New Orleans, Louisiana. But the kids love this project. And they work hard, and they're problem solving, and they're collaborating, and they're thinking the whole time. Way better than that lecture idea. And that's active learning. They remember this for years afterwards. So finally we get to high school. These kids are in their last few years of school. They're ready to get out. When they're done, they're going to enter their professional working world. Some are going to go to work. Some are going to go to college. Some will go to trade school. Some will go to the military. How are we going to finish off that last piece of professionalism? First, we're going to have to model the communication skills that they should have already basically honed in on. We're going to get them ready to walk out the doors. One of the ways that I like to do that as a high school teacher is through role play. My students love role play through whatever year, whatever event, whatever person we're studying. Role play really helps them learn about professionalism, and it helps them learn about empathy, which is another piece to professionalism that I think we try to kind of skip over. But my students in question and answer, reflection time, this is one of the things that they always love in my classes. I'm going to leave you with these three things. We need to keep our students actively engaged every day. Research, brain-based activities that you can use in your classroom to keep them actively engaged. If we're not keeping them engaged in the classroom, we've lost them before they walk in the door. Students must have time to collaborate with each other and with us, whether we're talking about our content or we're talking about life skills. They have to have that time. School is such a social environment. They have to have time to talk. And finally, every day we must allow our students to wonder, to use their imaginations. That's what's going to help them build these skills. And if we're doing all these things, then we're going to bring the joy back to learning. Thanks.